Hello and welcome to Finextra TV. I'm Alex Lippic, and very kindly joining me in the studio today is Richard Pearce, founder of Responsible Risk, and we're going to be discussing the upcoming event in October, Sustainable Finance.Live 2024. Richard, it's great to see you.
Alex, good to see you, and thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. And you've got a big event coming up, of course, in October, Sustainable Finance 2024. Before we discuss that in a bit more detail, can we have a bit of a recap on previous events and what you got out of them effectively?
Yes, well, we've been doing this with Finextra since 2019, so we've got a really good pattern of practice going on here. And what we've been trying to do is to not just have a conference, with lots of opinions and theories being espoused. We really want to look at the problems that are stopping capital being allocated to green projects, be they climate, nature related, and using technology as a way of actually enabling that flow of capital. That's always been what we've tried to do, and we've tried to do it by really helping organizations and startups, finding their mojo, if you like, and sort of building up the muscle that they need to do to be able to build either an internal practice or a business from really understanding this area, which is full of regulation and policy, even litigation these days. But it's complex. And what we've been trying to do is to say, this is the key focus areas. And then we talk about those. We even run a hackathon to try and help people put ideas into practice.
You mentioned some of the key themes there. Natural capital finance, that's a core theme of this year's event. Can you tell me a bit about what that actually means?
Well, this year we're revisiting a theme that we looked at about 3 years ago when we looked at natural capital, and we looked at what that meant. So, what is natural capital? It's nature and what we call ecosystem services. So we derive benefit from obviously water, air, farming, agriculture, and so forth. So there are all sorts of ecosystem services which are brought into the world of human existence, and obviously capital, human capital, financial capital, and so forth. So that was we did a piece of work on the definition of that. But what we found over the course of the last 18 months or so is the financial services industry is again facing a lot more policy and regulation coming through. And to a large extent, they're sort of going, but we don't really fully understand what this means. And my explanation didn't do, full justice to the area. But more importantly, probably, we don't understand the exposure that we have to it and what the risk is associated with it. And we don't understand the price of it. So without those things, which are the fundamentals of financial services, we can't price it. And if we can't price it, we can't invest in it. So this is one of the conversations that we've had that's made us realize that this year we want to go back to natural capital, but with a different focus. The year of the numbers is kind of the internal term we've been using. And by that, which is how do you price it? How do you understand the risk? And how do you take data from the field to the trade execution? How do we look at the left to right flow of the data that enables that trade execution? And that's what we're going to be focused on this year.
Really interesting insight. You touched on a few challenges there already. I was going to ask you to identify some more challenges for us. Have you pretty much mentioned them all, or are there any others?
No, well, there's a lot here. So, there's fundamentally, I think, a lack of understanding of this total area. Obviously there's lots of experts, but the majority are still saying we need some education. So we've taken on the task to really sort of show the left to right view. So in its totality, we're looking at satellites and space data. We're looking at how that can work with observational Earth observation data. Then how do you map it and locate it down to an asset and the owner of that asset? Then how do you look up the biodiversity data and say, well, how is that asset impacting nature? And then moving further on, how do you make decision-ready data come out of that? Financial services want to have decision-ready data, not PARS, space data and so forth. And then finally, how do you put it into a trading platform for actually execution and just, benchmarking and trading? So we're going to look at that whole left to right view to show the landscape, and then we're going to drill down to each of those, sub areas. But because it is such a big topic, we are going to start with, one of the key innovators in this area as an asset manager that's developed a fund and is actually starting to invest. and we will end with another. So we won't just be talking theory, we will be talking about people that are starting to execute the allocation of funds in this area. So it should be something for everyone.
It sounds like you've done your homework and it sounds very exciting indeed. Hackathon, now that's something that will be running alongside the event as far as I understand.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how can people get involved? Richard?
Yeah, I mean, some people, and I think I said this when we were talking last year with Hannah, what is a hackathon? Sounds like a sort of, slightly questionable practice, but actually, think of it as a sort of, the bake-off type approach. Well, you're given maybe some recipes, some ingredients, you're given a target to actually create something, that kind of standard game show formula. But what you're trying to do then is to in a short period of time with a team of people, assemble a solution to a particular problem. Now, we're laying out what the problem statements are, and those are associated with the space data I spoke about. So it's big, complex data. So how do we use artificial intelligence, large language models to help us? That's one particular area. Another area is around sustainable agriculture. There's a lot of talk about rewilding and regeneration, but we need food security as well. How do we finance the transition? So looking at some of the mechanisms there. And then there are big institutional finance mechanisms like bonds, sustainability-linked bonds, green bonds, and so forth. But the KPI measurement and management is hard. How do we solve that one? And then rolling all the way through to just the standard disclosure reporting problem that we have in every aspect of financial services. How can we do that better? So we've got these challenges. We assemble a cast of people, be they business people or technical people, and then we will help build teams. If you're individuals or if you want to come as a team, we'll take you as a team. We have an online platform where we mentor people with some fantastic people coming from the finance industry, the space industry, the tech industry, NGOs. And we help people who say, look, I want to get something done, but I don't quite know where to start. And we help you form the idea, take the idea forward, and then we take it over a period of time to an endpoint where, of course, we'll have a pitch day and a challenge. We'll be reviewed and we'll judge and we'll have some winners. So it's a fun process to learn and get something done.
Absolutely. And can I just say, I love that bake-off description of the hackathon there. You've sold it to me already, Richard.
We'll have to add some cakes next time. Yeah.
Absolutely. Looking beyond what is undoubtedly, I'm sure, going to be a very successful event, what's next, do you think?
Well, I think what happens from this is that we, as I say, we want to generate, ideas, but ideas into action. And so we have, as part of the judges and mentors, we've got 5 accelerators. And as everyone knows, an accelerator is a place, usually physical, where people can come together and meet all of the sort of mentors and guides that will help you start a business up to be successful. So if these ideas work, we'll introduce to those accelerators and hopefully carry forward. Even we'll introduce to the finance people who might want to, finance your great idea and your great business. As I say, the idea is that we would like to look back in, 5-10 years and see half a dozen companies that came through this process and are making a difference in the world. We already have a couple that we can look back on and say, they came through this process and are making a difference. So yeah, it definitely, is a familiar path, and that's the intent for the future, is that we get more of those.
I think it's a really exciting time. I wish you all the luck with it as well. It'd be interesting to see how things unfold, as you say, looking down the line. But best of luck with the event, and thank you so much for giving up your time to speak with me.
Well, thanks a lot, and go to Sustainable Finance.Live, and of course there all the detail can be found. So thanks for having me again.
Pleasure. Thank you, Richard.
Bye-bye.